Good evening. It's Thursday, the 12th day of December. The year is 2019. I'm Jerry George, and it's time for another edition of Mek We Chat. Mek We Chat comes to you on a Thursday evening, where we tend to take a look at the things that are around us in terms of the news. What's the big news stories across the region? We are a week late for the Dominica results. When we left you last evening, the elections were supposed to be the next day. But today, we are right on target for the British elections, the results of which are coming through as we speak. We'll have all of that in this edition of Mek We Chat. Joining us this evening from New York, we have our regular Margaret Francis from London, and Catherine is certainly going to stay awake tonight for sure, following the British results. George Grant is at the controls, and Bev Sinclair, our producer, is going to take it away from here. So welcome to all of you, and thanks for joining us. Call a friend, someone, and tell them to join us as we discuss issues that we think are important to you. Bev?
Where did she disappear?
Yes,
She's there.
Yeah,
she's
Bev.
just frozen.
Good evening.
I think she's frozen. She's
Program happiest. Oh dear. Oh dear, I'm frozen. Yes, I have been having issues with my internet all week. So if I am frozen, oh dear, maybe I should try and switch in connection and see. Am I back?
Yes, you're
Guys,
back.
just let me know when I'm back.
You're back.
Yeah, you're good now.
Great, great.
She's half back where
And
we're
then-
hearing her, but her video's gone.
And then
Oops,
she
now
freezes
she's gone.
again.
Oh, there she is.
Okay.
She's just switched
I have
seats.
I have very unstable internet, so I may be disappearing every now and then as we go through the evening. But while I'm here,
The trials.
it's what we pay for in the region. It's what we pay for. And I really don't know how much longer we're going to sit down and accept this and behave as if all is well. But of course, we're going to be looking at the results of the election in the UK. We are also going to be putting our eye on unpaid taxes in Grenada, which we hear have forced the closure of a major business in that country. We want to take a look on Dominica election. It was last week Friday, as suspect in chief said. We want to look at what the week has been since the results came in, and also we want to take a little look at banking in the Caribbean. We hear that another international bank is leaving. So that is where we are going this evening on Mek We Chat, as we look at some issues that very much impact our lives here in the Caribbean. Look at those issues and what we can do about them in our little corner where we are. So take it away, Jerry, whichever one of those topics you want to jump on. Maybe the bank first.
Probably let's leave the bank for a bit, if you don't mind. I think probably we should look at Dominic. Well, no, ATHIE's not here either. Look that he will join us. So, all right, let's do the bank. This morning, the announcement came that RBTT, which by and large, I think we all anticipated. In fact, from what I know, RBTT was the first bank that was going to actually leave. And for some reason, something happened, and Scotiabank made sure that they upstaged them. And so they announced that they were leaving. The FCIB, now RBTT has announced that it's leaving. RBTT is leaving, and it is selling out to 5 regional indigenous banks: Bank of Montserrat, Bank of Nevis, the Commercial Bank of Antigua, First National Bank of St. Lucia, and I'm missing one of them. I'm missing a bank somewhere. I'm doing this off the top of my head. Oh, here it is. There's my list. Who have I left? Oh, and the Dominica National Bank. So this concludes the retreat of the Canadian banks from the region. And it certainly leaves us to wonder quite a few things. One of them being, what is this new entity going to be called? because they certainly can't continue to operate as 5 separate entities. They have to combine what they're doing. How are they going to do that? What will be their focus? We have some very interesting times ahead of us. But the long and short of it is that the financial services landscape is about to change radically, because not only are we going to see changes, I believe, in the banking institutions, but by extension, we're going to have to see changes in some of the other financial institutions. For example, the building and loans where those exist, the credit unions where those exist. And there is going to be, inevitably, I believe, a consolidation of these services. Again, I'm saying, what would that mean for us? Because one of the things that the banks that have left, all of them, the FCIB, the Scotiabank, now the RBTT, one of the problems that they have been complaining about was the high level of non-performance loans. Now, they're not going anywhere. The banks that have taken over are going to have those non-performance loans to deal with. Are they going to have a different strategy than the banks before? And if they are, what would that mean? We just see ATHIE joining us. That's a good sign. Evening, ATHIE. But let me just finish in terms of this bank and by saying this. Republic Bank, which has bought 6 of the banks of the region, they have been denied sale of Guyana and so far Antigua. They have also bought out the Scotiabank business in the British Virgin Islands. What I find interesting is that they paid $120 million for the one bank in the British Virgin Islands. And the 7 banks that they were selling in this neck of the woods, they were selling them for $123 million. I hope people are getting what that means. It really shows the value that has been placed on some of the smaller branches, like in the OECS. Sometimes when we carry on that, we think we have this big business. So we are about to see, I believe, a really, really radical movement in terms of the financial industry in the region.
Yeah, but this consortium, which we hear will be purchasing RBTT, I find it a very interesting mix. First of all, we are not known to be able to really unite and do anything across this region, and especially when it comes to a matter of business of this nature. I am very, very curious to see what kind of vehicle is going to be built or going to be created. This, of course, is a precedent. Nothing like this has ever happened across the region before in terms of banking. We have seen larger financial institutions take over smaller ones. We have seen mergers of smaller institutions when the going gets rough out there. But we have not seen 5 indigenous banks coming together to buy an international bank. Certainly, we are treading into brand new territory here. And I am really, really curious to see what kind of vehicle is going to be created, how the ECCB is going to be handling this matter, and really to see what's going to be the outcome of this sale. Because certainly, if indigenous banks are going to be buying an international bank, right off the top, you would expect there is going to be a seismic shift in the type of business that the bank is able to offer. So I am really, really curious, and I must say also a little bit concerned about the purchase of this international bank by this local consortium. I hope my concerns will not find any ground when the details are rolled out. But for now, that is what I'm seeing, and that is how I'm looking at it.
The truth of the matter is that the hands of these banks are forced. Because if they do not, okay, let me illustrate it in a certain way. If somebody needs a $20 million loan, all right, they would have had to get a $20 million loan only through the foreign banks. The local banks do not have the capacity to lend $20 million and still run the bank and have money available. So what was being called for a while is for these banks to put their resources together so that they can be able to do that. So if they resisted the opportunity to buy this, then they would all think together. So in a sense, they have had to make the sale because it's the most logical, sensible, practical thing to do. And if they get the drift of that, they will have to find a way of how they work out the shares about who owns what. So it's going to be some very, very interesting times, as I keep saying. Because I mentioned that the big problem that the other banks complained about was non-performing loans. I took a look today at what has been the data on that, and it's not pretty. These banks now have to carry those non-performing loans. The international banks like Scotia, FCIB and stuff were saying that the non-performing loans was eaten into their profits so much to the extent. In fact, a former banker told me today of one of the big banks. He said, Jerry, I could tell you days when after a year, the bank was making like $100,000 in profit. I said, you're joking? He said, no. Another one who knows the industry said, Jerry, let me tell you. They say the big banks can make what they make in one of these banks in a year. Say, for example, the 123 million. They make that in one project, one transaction. And sometimes they have to work for the entire year with 50 staff members, I think, to make the same money. That's the bottom line. It's really a decision, a business decision. But it will really require our new owners to really have to be ready to face the challenge. It's going to be challenging.
Yeah, I'm sure there are going to be challenges in terms of structure, in terms of management, as you say, in terms of who get what, certainly in terms of services that are going to be offered, and in terms of how they will deal with this high volume of non-performing loans that have been around the neck of the bank for a long, long time. And it's not going to get much better on that front because, again, the banks have to take some blame for some of the non-performing loans because they have not been very strategic or very flexible or maybe even very smart, I would dare to say, in some of the things they have chosen to finance. Mostly, the banks roll out loans and offers for cars and houses. A car mortgage, a house mortgage, those are the two things you can easily get a loan for. And the moment you qualify for one of these, it's just handed to you just like that. And the bank expects you to continue to pay for it over a number of years, 10 years maybe in the case of a car, if you buy a new car, and certainly upwards of 30 years if you take out a mortgage. And this is the expectation that you will faithfully pay on that loan every month for that period of time. But the reality is that the landscape, the economic landscape has changed so much in all of our countries that people do not, there is no guarantee that someone is going to be able to service a loan for that extended period as it was maybe 20 years, 30 years ago when the economic landscape and the structure of jobs was different. It's not that way anymore. So a lot of things have changed there, but the banks have not changed according to how employment has changed and according to how people earning has changed. So they are left conducting business in the way it worked in the 1980s and the 1970s, when we are in the 21st century with a totally different type of playing field. And I don't think the banks really made that adjustment to get into the 21st century and into the new economy to offer a service or to tailor its product to better suit what is happening on the ground with people and the way they earn and the way they spend.
Well, Bev, let me stop with it, because the real reality is, you call it the new economy. The banks will tell you there's the no economy. Because what has happened so far is that the majority of our economies are in deficit. The amount of unemployment continues to rise. The number of people unemployed continues to rise. The jobs, the quality of the jobs out there are no longer, it's not that they don't want them, but the quality of jobs out there no longer allow people the privilege to be able to afford some of the things that they would like to. So it's an economic issue also, in the sense that if the economy isn't strong, all right, then the banks see themselves as being at risk. And they're not taking a risk.
Can I join the conversation? I'm sorry I'm late.
I want you in the conversation.
Welcome, ATHIE.
Because this is an interesting jump-off point, because, you know, we've had already the Scotia, if you will, purchased by Republic Bank, and some really interesting new problems are already emerging just in the transition period, whereby certain transactions, whether they be incoming or outgoing wire transfers, are now experiencing significant delays. And in some cases, some of the transfers, the inward transfers, have to do with, you know, many Caribbean people who lived and worked in Canada or UK or the US and are now back home, receive their Social Security or pension or other benefits payments through the banks. It appears that there is some delay in between for Republic Bank making a full and proper transition to being able to expedite these transfers. And so a significant number, from what we can determine just here in Dominica, I don't know if the same is true in other jurisdictions, but certainly pensioners, and these often are persons who are, you know, elderlies, for whom their monthly checks from Social Security or other payments overseas comprise almost their lifeline. And this is an important consideration for from a human standpoint, when we are considering, you were mentioning, are these mergers or buyovers designed to improve services? Well, if they are, you know, these services, you know, need to be on the up and up in very short order, so that people can actually not be placed at even greater risk and greater discomfort than they already are. But it causes me to ask, you know, Jerry, what's the motivation behind the National Bank's consolidated purchase of Royal Bank? What is it that Royal was doing so well that it is a very attractive asset, and we have the capacity to consolidate the funding to acquire that asset? Is it that but when I listen to you talk about the non-performing portfolios in this bank and other banks, clearly that may not be the case. So why then would they be going after RBC? Is it to expand access to capital, to funding? Is that automatically going to be a result of a takeover by local banks of an international bank? The answer is really clearly no, because it means that the international bank is exiting with its established links and arrangements in the global economy, and not necessarily, I'm sure, passing this over to us as part of the acquisition. So I'm digging for some sort of
let me help you.
Sensible
let me help you with the
rationale.
two. Let me help you with the two. I think I can. And the first instance, in terms of the delay for wire transfers and stuff, that goes straight to the correspondent banking issue. There is nothing that says when Scotiabank left that the banks that would have done the correspondent banking for Scotiabank would automatically do the correspondent banking for Republic Bank. Republic Bank has to establish its own record and its own reputation with whoever they chooses to be their correspondent bank. I believe, though, that Scotiabank would have helped them in the sale to try to establish that. But ATHIE is, let me ask you a question, and I'm going to show you how this goes beyond banking. Is Western Union back up in Dominica?
Not as far as I know.
Exactly. Let me expand. It's the same thing. They might, I hear they say it's a compliance issue. Sorry, it's a technical issue. But I went and did my homework behind the scenes. Now, that report out of Algeria and the fact that there is this thing of how much kinds of money in Dominica, I kept saying it's going to hurt Dominica down the road. Correspondent banks are saying, oh, Algeria has found that this amount of money, this exposure is there. They are going to tighten their demands, right, on Dominica. And so even Western Union is suffering because it's compliance. They are going to tighten the compliance issues. And that is what you see happening with the monies that normally come through. They are going to demand that the new bank demonstrate to them that they understand what compliance is and that they have all the compliance in place. In the meantime, you're quite right, the customer will suffer. And I must ask a question about the other banks that have been taken over. If this is just a Dominica problem, or if it is a regional problem. I will find out that tomorrow, God willing. But that's where the issue is. And if you have heard me on this issue, I keep saying from the time the sale came through, I said, this is going to expose us from a correspondent banking position. It's going to expose us. Maybe that's what you're feeling. So when I saw that Western Union wasn't working, I immediately went and did my investigation. And the first word I was given, Jerry, compliance. They're tightening the screws. And it's interesting in Dominica's situation where I'm smiling because if you went to collect some monies that was sent to you via Western Union, you better walk with your ID to properly identify yourself. Not 1, 2 pieces, but yet in that same country, you could exercise your franchise without identification. I think it's funny if you really look at it from a certain perspective. It just is not right.
Hey,
but
Jerry.
That's another story. We've been through that enough.
So question, did they say specifically or give any idea what were the compliance issues specifically? What areas that they were failing
I don't know. That is going to be between that is going to be between the units. They will tell them what the areas of compliance are.
No, but I was asking
sure.
I was asking in the case of Western Union because their operations, they haven't closed operations in the other island, have they?
They close operations. No, each island is treated on its own. They closed operations in Antigua. Antigua just started back up maybe 6-8 weeks ago, if I'm right, or maybe slightly longer than that. But they have closed Antigua for a while for the same reason. And in fact, Antigua now is down to, I think, just 1 outlet. It is a very serious matter, and I'm saying it comes down to that issue. And I'm sure if you would have heard me, I mentioned when the sale at the bank came up that we have to watch how the corresponding issue is going to be settled. And the same thing is going to happen with RBTT. The same thing is going to happen when FCIB is taking over, the exact same thing, because each of them have to find the banks that will work with them to perform corresponding banking services for them. And that is why I say we're in a very, very dodgy period this time, and we could find that they begin to make even more steeper demands. Or if the demands are not steeper, the other direction they will go in is that the cost of money transfers is going to go up.
So what then would be the rationale? If all these issues and challenges exist, and I see them as you do, why would such a move be made at this particular time? Also, given the point I think Beverley made earlier, that our respective economies are not really performing well, so that the home-based economy that actually provides an important source of revenue through savings and so forth to these banks is not there. People are using up their savings rather than expanding the savings base of the financial sector. So why would this be happening now? I'm still digging. I don't see the logic.
I think it is happening because in 2015 the Canadian banks, all of them, made the decision that they were leaving the region.
Okay.
That's it. No,
So we know,
why
and we
you
know
ask
why they made that decision.
Yeah.
But why would our bank be
they told,
making
in
that
fact,
decision now? I mean, if
when you say
somebody's
our bank,
walking
what do you mean?
away, if somebody's walking away from a situation because it's not working out for them, and you are in the same business as that person, why would you then be expanding your exposure, your reach in that particular area, which is not working for even more experienced and institutions with a much wider global reach than you? I just, it's
But
not
Ati,
logical to me.
if somebody doesn't do it, Ati, if somebody doesn't do it, will be left without banking services. That is an untenable position to be in a modern world.
So
And I illustrated it a while ago. Maybe you probably hadn't come in. I said, if somebody wants a project that requires, let me not even say 20 million, $10 million, right? The international banks could have funded that because they had capital that was coming in from elsewhere, and it would not have necessarily affect the operation of the bank. Practically none of the indigenous banks could take on a loan of that capacity and continue to function the same way. That's why they needed to consolidate. So the 5 banks who they chose to sell to have to demonstrate that together, when they put their capital together, that they can take on the challenges and the requests of some big business that comes in to do big business, to do a $1 million loan. But none of them by themselves can do it.
But it's puzzling to me. I'll tell you why. The last Cotonou Convention comes to an end in June of next year. It's a 20-year agreement between the ACP states and the European Union. And included in that convention, as in all the previous conventions, all the Lomé conventions, was a facility whereby our financial sector could get access to 1% finance from the European Investment Bank for both commercial and social on lending, either through partnerships, through cooperatives, partnerships of the kind that the NBDs have apparently forged over the last period of time. But there is not, I am not aware of any instance in the English-speaking Caribbean, and of course I can be proven wrong by if somebody knows otherwise, but I am just not aware of any situation where, for example, a group of banks, local banks, went to the European Investment Bank and said, we need $10 billion or 10 billion euros, as the currency would have been, over X period, and here is the program that we're putting on this: housing, agriculture, and engineering. And this
Let me answer that.
but the money was sitting there.
Let me answer that for you, Ati. Hold on, Ati. Let me answer that for you. You'd have to realize that because the dominant banks in the region were Canadian banks, they would not do that. 1. 2, maybe 8 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago, the chairman of the Caribbean Development Bank was noting the fact that the Caribbean Development Bank has so much money and nobody is coming forward to get it.
Yeah, so I mean, so it begs the question.
That's the problem. That's the problem. But you see, the indigenous banks by themselves singly would not have found it easy to approach the European Union to get that money. No, together as a consortium, and they better do it before the Cotonou agreement expires.
Yeah, okay.
Together, they would be in a better position to do that.
Okay.
You understand?
I have to excuse myself for 1 second. Well, I'll be right back.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, folks. So that is the challenge there. It is that the banks that have been approached to buy it they have to do it. Otherwise, the region will be short of banking. What?
Hi. Sorry to be late, guys.
It's all right.
Good evening.
We understand. You want to share anything on this?
I'm just wondering if the First of all, I think this has been a
My
process.
internet is on
I don't think it's
zero.
just starting now. The thing with the banks,
Mhm.
and the problems with correspondent bankings and linking and delinking and so. I think it's been an ongoing thing, part and parcel of the effort to squeeze us. And I hate to sound like a victim, but to try to squeeze us. And I wouldn't be surprised if part and parcel of the effort to squeeze us is in some way related to the CBI programs which we have in these islands. Concern about money, characters, anti-money laundering, and that sort of thing. Mind you, most of the world's money laundering is done in the metropolitan areas. But again, cynical me, they control the game.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't be surprised if the CBI programs may have something to do with it. And I think the pressure, as I said, started a long time ago. The OECD, FATF, they're always coming with something for you to tighten up, some law for you to change, something like that. And, you know, I don't know if you ever try to open a bank account in the States. It's a lot easier.
Oh, yes, I know.
It's a lot easier than doing it here. A lot easier. But that's the reality which we face. You did say something as a kind of side point, Jerry, that none of these indigenous banks around here, I think I heard you say, could easily issue a $10 million loan. Did you say that?
That's correct, yeah. I just call a figure. That might not be the figure, but
that's a small
that might
figure.
not necessarily be the
because
figure.
that's an
a small
easy loan.
figure.
That's an easy loan for our bank.
Yeah. About $100 million a company. I just use that as a figure.
$100 million, they'll go in with a consortium. They'll go in with a consortium. You see, the metropolis has to be careful with this as well, eh? Because if you try to choke people, somebody might come in and provide an alternative. I remember many years ago.
Who?
China.
Thank you. Which is exactly what is happening.
China's big, is a big, powerful economy. China's model is working. China's imperial business and political models are working. And the Chinese wouldn't mind if a lot of international trade is done off the US dollar. We know smaller entities like the guy who they hanged, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi and others have been looking for alternatives set to the petrodollar and that sort of thing, the US dollar. And the people have paid the ultimate price for that. But they can't do that to China. And you have to be careful. As I was saying, some years ago, when I was in government here, Mr. Joe Biden, who was then a senator, was in St. Kitts and Nevis, vacationing. And I had a chat with him. And I told him, the way you guys run your government up there, it seems to us as if you've forgotten how close we are to you and how circumstances down here impact you and vice versa. And you all are turning your backs on the region and making it very hard. And he apologized to me, you know, like, informally, of course. He apologized for then President Bush. Then he became vice president to Mr. Obama. And the same pressures continued. Nothing got better for us. And under Mr. Trump, the chokehold is just tightening.
I don't think it's that nothing happened under Obama. For example, Jamaica is where it's at because of Obama. I mean, it probably didn't happen as fast enough. But I'm going to make a couple of points on that China issue because it sounds nice, eh? But it so happens that our region the majority of our purchases come through the US. The majority of our people or remittances come through the US. So
Yep.
no matter how you cut it, we will have to have correspondent banking relations. No matter how you cut it.
Yeah, but you see, I'll tell you, look how they beat the sanctions on Iranian oil and so forth. And China is involved in all of those things. It wouldn't be easy, Jerry. Can't be easy if you're up against a behemoth like the United States and the banking, those fellows who control the world banking system. But what I'm saying is that there may be a political implication, consequence for the United States that it mightn't like, and it could create further tensions in this region, which would be too close to the United States. So there must be some line beyond which they wouldn't go. I really do believe that the CBI programs may be a factor. I really do think so. You don't have that problem in the Dutch and French islands.
A factor how, Dwyer? From the security standpoint, from the
all of the above. Clean money.
But I mentioned that
anti-money laundering.
I mentioned to again, I've repeated this week after week, and when we discuss this issue, that in Dominica, the foreign banks sent back the monies that had come into the CBI program and closed all of the accounts, and all the people associated with it, the agents, everybody that had monies and had accounts in them, they called them and gave them back their money. Then everybody had to rush the Dominica National Bank, and that's where the business has been conducted so far. So CBI is definitely an issue.
Same thing here.
Exactly. So it's not
Scotia Bank used to do it here, and they handed it over.
Right. And then you now have added to that the Al Jazeera report, which has made it very clear where some of this money is coming from and who's involved. That's all they want to see. And not that they don't know, they know. But they're certainly going to be running like headless chicken away from that.
And are you hearing me, folks?
Yes, Beverly, good night.
Good night.
Yeah, we're hearing you.
I'm trying very hard to stay in the broadcast tonight, so you will see I've turned off my video, I've switched devices, my internet is very unstable, so I'm doing my best to stay here. But Dwyer, you mentioned the circumvention of the Iran sanctions. Remember, that was illegal, and one of Dominica's ambassadors in jail for that.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So I don't know if it's an example I would want to cite when we're talking about doing business the right way and the proper way.
Well, I don't have illegal, Beverly. Illegal is not necessarily the wrong way, you know. Illegal is contrary to somebody's law. Somebody who wants things to be a certain way. Now, it might be the wrong way for you because it puts you holding the short end of the stick because you don't have any leverage as a country, and already as a region, we don't operate as one to give ourselves some degree of leverage in the global conversation. But the people will find ways around these things. And if you have a powerhouse like China...
But let me ask a question. Are we more or less exposed as a region to the uncertainties of, you know, what's taking place globally in the financial world, in the economic world, in the security world? Are we more exposed now than we were before? And if so, why? Are there things that we have done that have not been helpful in terms of reducing our vulnerability? Maybe that's a better word than exposure.
ATHIE, you just had an election in Dominica. Almost every week on this program, you call names of bad actors connected with a CBI program. Dominica is not the only jurisdiction that can, in inverted commas, boast bad actors. And the presence of bad actors on our CBI stage is not a recent thing. It's been going on. The United States FinCEN, the Treasury Department, and the Canadian government were cautioning us for years here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you.
For years,
Thank you.
they were cautioning us.
Thank you.
Okay.
So this is why I said, I don't know if you just absented yourself for that moment, that I would not be surprised if the conduct of the affairs of our CBI programs in the sub-region may in some way be connected with these difficulties we are facing.
But Dwyer, I'm saying to
I'm
you,
of
it's
that
not
view
maybe.
myself.
I am telling you for a fact, it is.
Okay?
It
I will,
is.
I wouldn't argue against that, Jerry.
Mhm. Say again?
I would not
Say again?
argue against that. I would not oppose your argument. I believe so too.
So here's the
No,
question.
I'm telling you
If we
for
accept
a
that,
fact. That's the problem.
but if we accept that, Jerry, then I go back to my original question. What then is the logic behind such, what would be for us, a major move by our national banks? Is that
That's what I'm saying.
is that a good option now in light of what Dwyer has reminded us and so forth? In other words,
Well,
how
no.
does it fit?
The local banks now will find that the requirement for compliance is going to be tighter. One. Two, somebody has to step into the breach. Otherwise, this region is going to be short banked. So somebody has to do it. But when they climb into the breach, they have to understand what they're taking on when they get in there. So it is not that it is like an option that we have. Somebody has to come in to provide the level of banking services that the foreign banks provided for us. Somebody has to do that.
Jerry?
That's why you realize what happened. No one bank in any of the islands could do it. So that's why they have to find a consortium to do it.
Guys, let me ask you all a question. How much would you bet against, within the next 5 years, we see the presence in the OECS of at least one Chinese bank?
No, that is quite
I wouldn't
possible.
bet against that.
I won't bet against that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I am still making the point that even if a Chinese bank came into the region, the Chinese bank has to establish corresponding banking relations with the US, Canada, with two.
Jerry,
Remember one thing. You know
geopolitics more than 99.9% of the people. When you got power, you could do things.
Well,
China has power.
When you have regulators to deal with.
Regulators.
Mm-hmm. 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 That is the problem there now. It's not a political problem. Don't forget it. It's not a political problem.
Who told you so?
It's a problem of regulation.
Who told you it's not a political problem?
Well, it's not a political problem.
But who is regulating the banks in the United States and Europe, which launder more money than we could ever imagine exists?
That might be true, but we can't get away with it.
No, so it's not. It has to do with politics and geopolitics, and I would like to see them handle the Chinese banks. The Chinese banks are bigger than their banks, you know.
ATHIE, DWYER. Remember this one thing.
ATHIE's a good-looking one.
Remember this one thing before we take a break, right?
Yeah.
That all business basically in the world comes back down to US dollars. Don't forget, the IMF has not accepted the yuan as part of the basket of currencies yet, you know.
Up to now, Jerry.
Exactly, that is the point I want to make. We could feel all the other ways. These are the reality.
Yeah, but up to now. Tomorrow will not be now.
Chinese. I agree, but we're talking about now. Even if China wants to do business, it has to do business in US dollars. It's a world currency. And that's the point I want to make.
But you see, a lot of business is being done outside of US dollars.
Like
A
what?
lot of
And in which currency?
in different currencies.
Mm-mm.
Yes.
Once you're doing big international business, you have to come back. In the world's financial system, you have to come back to US dollars. You have to
Okay.
calculate it in US dollars.
All
Why you
right.
think, remember the brick bank was all this big story before? Remember? Where is it?
Wait,
Same reasons. Well, let's take a break. I think we've gone long past our break time, actually.
Okay.
Let's take a break. And this edition of Mek We Chat will be right back with much more. Don't go away.
Because your vehicle is a necessity, being roadworthy is critical. Hubbard's Motor Department introduces its new tire and battery sales and service outlet located at Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, close to the Sugar Mill Roundabout. Available are a wide range of competitively priced tires, maintenance-free batteries, oils and lubricants. Keeping in mind your busy schedule, this outlet is equipped to provide you with fast and reliable service. Simply drive in and you'll be delighted with your service experience. For more information, contact 440-2087. Hubbard's. Quality service. Affordable prices.
Grenadian continues to celebrate 25 years of partnership and growth. So this December, we're giving every customer the chance to spin and win. Just pay your bill in full on or before December 18th. Then, on Wednesday, December 18th, join us at any Grenadian customer care location. Spin to win giveaways that will make this season even more festive. Hams, groceries, gift vouchers, wine, electricity vouchers, and more. Join the celebration. December 18th, spin and win with Grenadian. Visit our website or Facebook page for more information. Terms and conditions apply.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Why wish upon a star? For a bank is better by far. Whatever you're wishing for this Christmas, will give you low interest and no fuss.
Co-op Bank is making Christmas wishes come true. Fix up your home, treat your loved ones, and get everything on your Christmas list this year with our no-fuss loans. As we count down the 12 days to Christmas, you can win awesome prizes every day. Special terms and conditions apply.
Christmas wishes come true with Co-op Bank and you.
Welcome home.
John.
Alrighty, folks, we are back with the usual suspects. There's Catherine Edwards, top left, top right. There's Margaret Francis. Right down below Margaret is Atherton Morton, Dominica. Center stage, DWYER ASTAPHAN. Just below him is Beverley Sinclair. Beverley, by the way, is having some trouble with her video tonight. So we can hear her, but we're not seeing her. And then, of course, off to the left, Mr. Jerry George. Take it away, guys.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Yep.
Jerry, we want to look at that situation in Grenada, where we have a supermarket chain that has closed its doors because of what we're hearing is some unpaid taxes. Now, this supermarket, and they had about 5 or 6 outlets across Grenada, said to employ some 200 people, and they have been operating in Grenada for certainly close to, if not more than 20 years now. A staple in the society, Andalan Associates. It's where people go for cheap goods. They get the best prices on a lot of stuff. And they do provide, you know, where people like to go and shop for a bargain and shop to get better prices than they would probably get elsewhere. Now, last week, all of a sudden, Anders issued a notice that they are closing with immediate effect.
Wow.
Because of a move against them by the government of Grenada. The government of Grenada hastily issued a news release to say the closure of any business is a management decision, and it doesn't have anything to do with them. But they also went on to give a whole long explanation about the consequences of not paying your taxes. So we understand that the company's accounts or account was garnished because of outstanding money, which includes VAT, which is a tax that businesses collect on behalf of government, and you're supposed to collect that money and pay it over at the appropriate time. So that is the short of the story. I also understand that the staff notice like overnight on Sunday night that Monday morning the stores will not be open. So people who were probably preparing to go to work on Monday all of a sudden learned they didn't have a job. They just had to stay home. And this has really rocked Grenada in many ways because Andals and Associates has just been a staple in the country. And
Beverly.
Beverly has a bit of the problem. Go ahead. Somebody's going to say something.
I was disappearing. Beverly's breaking up.
Yeah, the quality of that is not good enough. But I think we understood what she said, that there's this business in Grenada that closes to on Monday morning.
200 employees.
Right, 200 employees, and it seems to be surrounding the payment for taxes. No,
so if
I
they
cannot
owe taxes,
follow it up.
If they owe taxes, why don't they pay their taxes?
And
we had a similar problem here years ago. And then I don't know the facts over there, right? But companies, big companies particularly, tend to try to hold the government and the country at ransom. I am not judging, I don't know the facts in Grenada. But I know of a situation here some years ago. It didn't reach that extreme point. But they were assessed. And they could pay lawyers and it could stretch it out for years. And what should have been a very massive tax bill was reduced to nuts change, what we call here nuts change. Relatively speaking. So, I mean, if the company genuinely owes the tax and it is undergoing difficulties, then I could see them sitting down with the Inland Revenue, the Ministry of Finance, and seeing if they can work out something, if there's a genuine problem. But if this is just recalcitrance, or maybe using it as an excuse to close down and go out of business, and of course the government will get the blame. So I can't judge on this. It's just if 200 Grenadians are going to lose their work, and this is maybe the most relied upon supermarket chain in the country, then you have a problem.
But Athie, sorry, why am I keep calling you Athie? Athie boy, it's all calling him such a last couple of weeks.
He looks like me, you know, but in another dimension.
He looks like you on the top, on the top.
I wish.
But Dwyer, here's where I kind of I dissect it, right? If VAT is included as outstanding payment,
right,
that's serious. Because the way VAT works is that the business is supposed to collect the VAT on behalf of the government. Now, I always have a problem with that because the government has imposed you to work for them, and you don't necessarily have to get paid, right? But that money, the VAT money, you are simply the custodian to pass it on. No, that to me is a different thing than if the person has business tax. Yeah, you understand when I say business tax, what I mean?
Yeah,
the taxes that come as a result of, right, okay? And I think we need to separate the two things, because if indeed and in fact that is owed to a large extent, that's very criminal, because that's not, in the true sense of the word, your money. The other one is a different story. and they might be able to compete with the Inland Revenue Department and say, well, we should not have paid this amount of taxes because this was the state of our business. Two different things. Two different things. And my other point about this is this: why has this been allowed to go on for so long? Because it seems that it is a problem that has existed over a really extended period. So why did the authorities allow this to go on for so long? And this is where both sides will have to be culpable, where they need to be culpable. And my final point on this is, why didn't the government take the approach of garnishing their accounts? There are just some questions that I don't understand.
Yeah.
If anybody has any
Yeah, I think they're all valid questions. I know the account was frozen. I think, and Andal did say to someone that among other things the account was frozen, and they had some containers on the port as well that was seized or whatever. In that case, my other question I was wondering too is Andal the only business in Grenada in that situation? And if there are other businesses, and if so, why were these other businesses not targeted? For example, in terms of business,
the authorities are saying. No, go ahead, Margaret.
No, I was just saying because it's also an open secret that a lot of other businesses, when it comes to VAT, have not been paying their VAT. And one of the things that a lot of businesses do is that they don't give you a receipt. When you go, but yeah.
That's good to get around it.
Yes, a lot of businesses don't give people receipts when you go in there.
They collect the VAT?
Yes, they do.
And yes, they don't receipt you?
But they don't give you a receipt.
So where are the inspectors? Where are the inspectors from the Inland Revenue?
Good question.
And that's the point.
Yes.
That's the point.
No, you get a stupid person like me who would walk into one of those stores. You don't give me a receipt. I'm making noise. I want my receipt.
Of course. You got to need bandit. I don't understand this. Definitely.
But so those are some of the other things about that whole thing that bugs me. I think too, in addition to what Bev said about the number of people that Andal employed, anybody who knows Grenada will know that most of the major supermarkets prior to Andal coming on the scene were really located in St. George's. So for somebody in the rural area needing supermarkets, they would have to come all the way down to town. And one of the things that Andal did was open branches within communities. So, a person didn't necessarily have to go into St. George's in order to get groceries. They could get groceries there. So, and they would also open on Sundays as well. And, so that also helped people. So in addition to the people who have been laid off, there are also communities that will be affected as a result of the business closing as well. Normally the people in those communities are the people who actually need it because they're pretty much on the lower end of the economic scale. And so the added, not having to pay a bus fare to get into St. George's, they can pretty much walk to wherever they need to go and get the groceries available to them. So there's all of that.
But it's not just that. There's another side to that, Margaret. The fact that it's in there, they don't have to buy the bulk. They can go quickly and buy a small portion and use it.
Correct.
And sometimes you don't understand how that the village shops, that's how the village shops survive.
Exactly.
That they could go and buy a smaller portion than having to buy a large quantity. But all that is true, and it's a great business model, but it comes back to the basic question. And this release put out by the authorities to say they didn't have anything to do with it. I find today that in so many instances, governance management, the people who are in charge just drop the ball. Why did they have to put out a statement like that? So verbose anyway. And it's one thing to say that the account is frozen, but the government has the ability not just to freeze the account, but to garnish it. So why did you choose freezing the account as compared to garnishing your account? It just leaves a whole ton of questions in my mind.
Right. And why is it that, obviously this would have been a bone of contention, not now. Were any efforts made to work out some sort of solution prior to it coming to this?
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
Is this company a local people?
Yes.
Oh. That's all the more troubling. All the more clearly, Margaret, I think you made a point, or at least you hinted at it. This must have been something in the brewing for some time, something in the making for some time, and perhaps ought to have been treated with earlier. But it's not a good thing at all. And then the government will lose revenue. They will lose revenue, although we have this high importation bill, all of these islands. It will lose revenue on duties and the tariffs that are paid on goods that the company would have brought in.
I bet you this make it into the next report of the IMF and World Doing Business. I bet you.
Well,
because one of the complaints they always have is that question of management and compliance and the fact that the inland revenue doesn't do sufficiently to collect. You can have a business owing money for that length of time to get to that state where it affects the something
exactly.
wrong.
But the VAT has to be paid in every month.
Well, every 3 months. I think they get 3 months to pay.
They get 3, yeah, but okay, but we like.
But it's just that I have no excuse for them. I will not excuse whatever they did with VAT. But then, having said that, the other problem that some of these places have is that yes, you pay the VAT that you ought to, but the government is supposed to give you back, and many times the government do not pay back the portion that.
That is
I would like to hear. I would really love to hear what is at the heart of this, because that is another problem. Oftentimes, the government does not pay back to the company the portion of that should be refunded to them.
They give you credit.
Yeah. So maybe there is some contention, but no, it doesn't sound good for business.
It goes both ways, you see. Each side holds money for the other side.
Right.
And you know, if you're holding money for me, you could do something with that money.
That's right.
That you shouldn't be doing.
But in a sense, that's why they give them 3 months, because let's face it, the business is conducting a service for the government, because by law, the government says, you collect that for us. So they have the money for a certain period, and let's face it, if they're smart about it, they'll make some interest off of it, which in a sense could pay them back. They get 3 months to do it. But once it goes beyond that and so far beyond that, something is grossly wrong with the whole management of the tax system. Something is grossly wrong.
Right.
And I wouldn't be putting a lot. I wouldn't put. Go ahead, Margaret.
No, I was just going to say, when you think about the government statement and you read it, it's also laughable, because what government fails to realize is that the finger points back at them, and it shows their levels of incompetence and ineffectiveness and every other thing that you can think of. Because, as you guys rightly point out, why would you allow a situation to come to a point where a business has to close for non-payment of taxes?
Yeah,
I hope there's nobody compromised in it, because
that's exactly my concern, Margaret, which is, DWYER said it well, that there should have been ongoing conversations long before now that would have led to a more amicable win-win kind of situation. But I really look forward to the day. In fact, I hope I live long enough to see in the Caribbean that taxes are not just a source of revenue for government, but really a real stimulus to creating and building the kind of society that we want. Why not give incentives on taxes and so on for people who are investing in a supply chain that is increasingly locally sourced or regionally sourced? Why not give breaks, if you will, incentives and taxes to people who are investing in training and upgrading constantly their staff, in introducing new modern kind of systems, not just technology, but systems that actually make them more efficient, that reduce their energy demand, reduce their water demand, reduce their garbage supply to the landfills. In other words, why not see tax as more than just a source of revenue for the state to run, but as a toolkit, part of the toolkit for incentivizing the creation of a private sector and a public sector that is really at one about building the kind of society that all these international agreements talk about, and all of us sign on too. But we just come back home and we engage in an anachronistic system of taxes as if we're back in the dark ages. You know, there's possibility for something like taxes to be a positive thing. It's treated like a we and they thing and a negative thing, and I don't know. That's my view really on taxes.
ATHIE, let's look at this thing narrowly. If the government stop placing the emphasis on taxes, where are they going to get money from?
Well, the point is, this is not a today, tomorrow transition. This is something you transition to over a period of time, where you cultivate that attitude towards taxes, because it means downsizing the public sector. It means reducing the public sector wage bill by retraining. It means, creating new avenues for people who have been trained by the public sector to find private sector openings for their skills as accountants, as planners, as managers, as human resource people. We have to stop seeing a we and they, a public sector over here and a private sector over here. It's one economy. It's one society. And the more we can create synergies between and among the various sectors, is the better chance we have. My God, we've tried for how many years this traditionally implanted system of we and they, and it hasn't worked. So why don't we make a transition? Over what period of time? I don't know, 4 years, 5 years, whatever. Even transitioning to having a coordinated day for elections in all of the OECS on the same day. But transitioning to that, so that in fact, there's a certain kind of is waiting, So we seem afraid as a people to explore new ways of doing things, and so we behave like insane people, doing the same things over and over again and expecting things to get better. So taxes is just one of those things. That's always been my submission to all the governments that have asked my intervention. They asked my intervention on VAT when it was being introduced. They got that extended. And before that, when Eugenia Charles was Prime Minister, I was part of a team of private sector and other people. And that was some of the submissions we made, that let's transition, You don't drop it on people, but transition to it.
Yeah, that is so true. Yes, we really need a new way of managing and doing business at the national level. But we see what is happening. Our systems have become corrupted, and because of that, they do not work properly. And that is what is holding us back right here in the region. We have to break out of the non-functioning systems that are really holding us prisoners right now. And they are non-functioning because they have become corrupted. They have been corrupted one way or the other, either by misappropriation of resources, by politics, by something that make them become dysfunctional systems. And because of that, they just don't work at it. They don't work. And those are the things.
If we take the same approach and apply it to our health systems, our education systems, how can you have people in our system that graduate from high school and cannot read and write, cannot sign their name, cannot write a paragraph, cannot write a sentence, And we praise ourselves for how many schools we've opened and how many teachers we this and what. But the children cannot read and write. They can't speak. They have no vocabulary. In the health system, why do we have chronic non-communicable diseases and other things rising at a time when we have had how many decades of experience in running our health systems? We've trained how many doctors, we've built hospitals, but those things do not, in and of themselves, constitute a good health system. We know that now, but we're still doing it. Now the Chinese are building hospitals for us. That's the only difference.
Dysfunctional systems.
Oh my goodness, guys.
We're not
I gotta laugh.
way of
I just
Chinese
have to laugh.
going.
You know.
But those are the results of dysfunctional systems. So the people in the revenue collection department who sat there for years and allowed Andal and Associates tax bill to climb to an unmanageable. All those people need to be out of jobs, just like the 200 people in Andals. You see, if we had a system which worked like that, we probably
I'm asking
would
myself,
have different things.
is there some kind of influence that is in the mix that might be holding tie in the hands of the people who should make those decisions? Because sometimes when they get to these things, you have to ask a lot of questions. You have to ask a lot. Because it does not sound normal that you would have a situation like this existing and nothing has been done for so long. It just doesn't, it's not right. It doesn't
Makes
right.
no sense.
Makes no sense.
No
And not only that, because the ministry, the department has the authority to act. And that is why I say the business of freezing their account. Why don't you just garnish their account? You could have done that ever since anyway. Take out what portion it is, let them scramble for themselves. Maybe that would have gotten their attention. But now you tell me that you're freezing their accounts and you're holding up the stuff on the court. I would really love to get to the bottom of what is this story, because this story has so many sides to it that's not making sense to me. Not making sense to me.
The only question that comes to my mind, how many criminals, real criminals, have been visited with that kind of decisive action by the authorities?
You see my point?
Yeah. But big business is big business.
Exactly.
Big business could get away with things.
Margaret raised the question, and it's a question that I ask as well. Should we expect to see this kind of action being taken against other business, or is it just Andals and Andal staff that's going to be feeling the effects of what the IRD can do, and other people who are in arrears will just be left? Just be left there singing their Christmas carols, while one entity, what's the point? You're making an example of Andals or something?
Well, criminals are offered amnesties and given how many weeks to return their illegal firearms. How can we not offer amnesty to people attempting legitimate business? How can we not do that? How can we not do that? When they are generating value, jobs, family support systems. How can we not do that? What's preventing us from seeing beyond our noses on these matters? 50 families is about what you're talking about that will be kind of, dismantled by laying off 200 people. At least 50 families. My goodness, that is a equivalent to a major human disaster in a small island like ours. What's the cost of that?
I think the authority is saying that they did not stop them. In other words, they did not issue to them, what must I call it, a closure order.
No,
right.
That's what I'm getting from the.
Is it a help order?
They're saying,
Jerry, is it a help order?
Hold on. Hear me through. They are saying that it is the business who took that decision. That's why I say I'd love to hear all the parts of this thing, because some bits of it just not making sense to me.
Jerry?
Yeah.
Can we ask Beverly to get some more information, and next time we meet, we maybe treat with it on the basis of that additional information? Because there has to be more
That's
to the
the
market
motive.
and the vessel.
It's not making sense.
Is motive.
Margaret?
And yeah, go ahead, Margaret.
No. I think, and while we're at that, maybe another question that we also need to answer to is the state of the workers. I mean, what protections and what is there for a mass layoff? Because in the case of that is considered a mass layoff. You know, in the U.S. And I mean, the other thing is that the workers were not unionized, so there wasn't a contract in place that would have protected them in the event that you had such a layoff. So, you know, what laws are there, if any, to protect workers who find themselves in such a situation? I mean, I know that in the U.S., you know, you
but
have
Margaret, even if there was severance.
Mm-hmm.
No, so even if there was severance laws, if they come to stolen, they still can't be paid.
Well, it depends on who pays the severance. It depends on who pays it.
No, in this case, it is going to be the business who pays the severance.
Why? I don't know what the law in Grenada says, but the law in St. Kitts and Nevis is that there is a severance payment fund. You make a contribution into it every month.
Okay.
And if a company severs a business, severs workers, then they are paid from that fund, which is in the hands of the government. So I don't know what the Grenada law says.
No, you guys have a nice system there, because I know, like, for example, there's a company closed here, I can't remember how many years now. In fact, they closed till another business bought it out and restarted and been operated. And just last week, I heard that the people from that will pay their severance. So that system in St. Kitts.
The thing in the U.S. too is that, you know, there's unemployment. So if you get, you know, if you're terminated in such a situation, unemployment is available to you. I mean, you contribute, the employer contributes to that as well. So, you know, they would have to pay and stuff
but
like
whatever
that.
comfort that brings, Margaret, that's only small and temporary comfort.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah,
I mean, I agree. I'm not, but you know, it's still better than nothing. I mean,
I know it's better than nothing, but
yeah, I mean, I
think
know
of
it's
the
small
mortgage,
comfort
think of the this and the that.
Yeah, and I mean, in the long term, I mean, even here with unemployment, that is only for a certain period of time. So, and I suppose it would be the same anywhere else.
Yep. And it could have this is why I asked if it's a locally owned company.
Yeah.
Because if it is, somebody will fill that vacuum in the market. And that could have cultural implications, eh? That could have cultural implications.
The other thing is that just prior to this, so Andal's also had a large supermarket in St. George's, and that building, and together with a restaurant area upstairs, and they had just sold that building and closed that one prior to this closure of the remaining outlets. So I don't know, you know, how that whole thing is gonna work out.
But if they just sold the building, they have money.
Well, you know, some people are saying the government probably wanted their cut of that as well.
The Inland Revenue will not clear the transaction for when they have to file the documents to pay stamp duty unless the money is paid. So, unless the taxes are paid or some arrangement is reached.
Yeah.
So
but if you're selling a building, but that's another point, why if you're selling a building and the sale is complete, because normally what they do a search, and if you owe anything, they will take the money out of it. They would not let you complete the transaction unless you are in good standing with the tax. Listen,
it also depends, yes, on what the buyer's lawyer is doing. If the buyer's lawyer is paying attention, he or she might not suspect that Anders has a massive $10 million bill, just to call a number.
Yeah, but the Inland Revenue is supposed to know that.
They do
know that. He might know that. So when he comes to close the transaction and the matter goes for clearance to the tax department should say, fine, we're not closing this until you pay that.
So now the buyer has a problem because the buyer can't get title. Exactly. Anyway, as I said, this is.
Let's find out. It's got a
Sammy.
lot more
Yeah,
to
this
it.
is definitely a story that has to be followed up on.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's take a break. We'll be
Right.
late
So
for a break,
let's
but
take.
Mhm. George?
Beverly? What she say?
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Can I have a chicken lunch, please? Large.
Real nice today.
Mm-mm. I don't want that.
But you just asked for a chicken lunch.
I don't have problem with the lunch. Afraid the container.
What is the problem with it?
These styrofoam containers, they don't good for the environment. They shorten with life.
What foolishness you telling me? So what you want me to use?
Put my food in this.
Where you get that?
At the food fair, where you could get all biodegradable food boxes and disposable food supplies like cups, plates, anything you could think about. Name it, it's there. And they don't harm the environment. Food fair, taking the lead in cleaning up and protecting the environment. Hey, like you take me advice, you get in your biodegradable food supplies.
Well, girl, I supporting who's supporting the environment. That is why I shop in at food fair.
Food fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets. Products distributed by Hubbard's agency, Kirani James Boulevard.
Why wish upon a star? For a bank is better by far. Whatever you're wishing for this Christmas, will give you low interest and no fuss.
Co-op Bank is making Christmas wishes come true. Fix up your home, treat your loved ones, and get everything on your Christmas list this year with our no-fuss loans. As we count down the 12 days to Christmas, you can win awesome prizes every day. Special terms and conditions apply.
Christmas wishes come true with Co-op Bank and you.
Welcome home.
Christmas safety tips. Always unplug Christmas tree lights before leaving home or going to sleep. Check your tree lights and outdoor lights for damage each year before you use them. Discard lights with frayed wires, loose connections, and cracked sockets. Do not overload your wall outlets or extension cords. Remind children never to touch lights or outlets. Select lights appropriately. Never use indoor lights outside or vice versa. Happy holidays from Grenadian.
We're back.
We're back. We are back. So, Madam Producer?
Well, we certainly want to look at the week that was in Dominica. The elections passed, the results came in. We want to look at the feedback and what has been happening over the past week.
Well, first of all, you used the wrong tense. The week hasn't was. It wasn't was. The week is. You know, it's a fascinating period. I mean, I almost feel guilty not having had you guys here to sharing this, and but it really is an extraordinary time. Having been through many of these events, you know, in my life so far, but without a doubt. First of all, there was a period of supreme calm on the 7th and on the 8th. Yeah, I mean, you could hear a pin drop in the middle of a forest. Wow. And that takes some doing. And, but, you know, from Monday and today is what, Thursday? You know, there was a gentle but inexorable rise of feeling and voices and comments and We even had 3 tremors. One of them was a 4.2.
Yeah.
and,
the earth
yeah.
shake. Wow.
And the rain hasn't stopped since. It's
Wow.
been raining steadily since the 6th of December. And that is for those of you who, watch those things and interpret them for whatever it is they say to you. But without a doubt, there's an anger, but I've never seen such a managed anger like this one. It puts the anger that drove the protests, it makes them look like a children's picnic in terms of the intensity and when you have conversations with people, including people from all sections, political cross sections, the laborites are extremely quiet, extremely reticent and docile. Everybody else is very, very vocal. People are reporting, and I'm happy to say that this time around there's a team of attorneys and data collectors working full-time to gather all the evidence of irregularities that occurred in the course of the elections. And so that's good news. But people, every day there's more. Every day, and it's more, and it's painfully more. Because the harsh reality is there's been no pushback, no denial, at least not domestically. We understand Roosevelt's carrot. And by the way, we do not have a prime minister. We do not have a government in the view of a substantial portion of the population, because the election clearly was rigged and stolen. So we do not accept that, as the OAS tried to say in their report, in their preliminary report, that the election reflects the will of the people. It does not. The numbers speak volumes to that. And instead of the usual suspects, including the politicians, coming out and trying to defend, they're sending out their agents to make statements. They had the manager of the Port Authority try to give data on visitor voters, visitor arrivals over the 4-day period, from the 3rd through the 7th, 8th, and it's turning out to be, there are still people in Dominica who came in to vote who are trying to leave. They cannot leave. Every flight out of Dominica is filled until the 20th. There are still people in Dominica who didn't realize that the ticket they were provided with to come to vote was a one-way ticket. And they only realized that when they went to the airport to go back. And they had a one-way ticket. And they didn't have the money to buy a one-way return. And they didn't have, some of them did not, sadly, did not have the money to pay the exit tax of 75 EC dollars. So, and if you haven't, you should take a look at the number of planes and flights that came into Dominica. If we had had a third of that business as part of our regular tourism, Dominica would be a leading tourism destination in terms of stay-over tourism. At one time, there were over 30 flights on the ground at Melville Hall Airport. Flights that carried between 17 and 42 people. So this is really very serious stuff. This is really very serious stuff. And I'm not talking about the ferry thing and so on. So this is painful for me to talk about in such calm tones, because it represents a serious violation of all, according to law, as well as according to natural law, societal law. For example, as you all know, we have had the call for the voters list to be cleansed and for ID cards to be provided to qualified voters. That goes back to 2005. And all the international observers have supported that call and themselves made that call as recently as August of this year. It didn't happened. So we had a voters list going into this election of close to 75,000 people. 75. The numbers that came out of that electoral exercise showed the Dominica Labour Party coming away with 23,000, which is about 32%, 33% of that thing. The opposition party came away with about 16,000 and some hundred. A significant portion of the Dominica Labour Party's take was the people who they brought in. The numbers range from 2,700 to 6,000 voters. The numbers, when reviewed, show that about 10 marginal constituencies that were even Steven by all the polls, 10 constituencies were targeted with these visitor voters. So they were deposited there. People whose names were on the list were sent to those their constituencies. People whose names were not on the list were given the names of people who were dead or who were not now in Dominica, and they went and voted against those names. Hence the reason for maintaining the bloated list. And the evidence is so overwhelming. Because as you know, as you go in and you vote, the name is scratched out or checked out as having been there. And people are now understanding that their grandfather voted, or some people who went to vote discovered that they had already voted because somebody else came and voted on their name, and so on. People were handed, the people arriving by ferry, these are the people who took big charter flights from the US, went to Martinique and took the ferry to Dominica. When they alighted, they were handed slips with the name and voter number and polling station to which they would go, and the buses are over there. And this bus will take you here, that bus will take you. This thing was, given Jack his jacket, this thing was a highly kind of organized like a military exercise. It was efficient, it was masterful, and it worked. It got them the results they wanted. But in 8 constituencies, if you look at if you consolidated the victory margin in 8 of those 10 targeted constituencies, you come up with a total of 1,410 votes that accounted for the difference in those 8 constituencies. 1,410 votes. So even if they brought in over 6,000, or even if you say 3,000, it is 1,400 votes that actually made the difference in determining who won and who lost the poll. There was still this time around no access given to the opposition party to state-owned radio or television. It was blocked. Several attempts were made to get on radio invoking equal time principles. None of that. Well, in one case it was recognized, and the leader of the opposition was given time to speak on the local radio station or station. So in truth and in fact, people, we've had that local dimension, and it has got people to the point where if anybody had any doubts about corruption, infecting the election process, it's all there to see. But there's a regional dimension that I want to bring to your attention, because it involves a lot of the other OECS and CARICOM countries. The RSS was sent to Dominica, and a significant crew of RSS soldiers arrived before the election and made their presence felt in the city and then around the country. We understood subsequently that they had been convinced, that the leaders of the various islands were convinced by our government of the time that there was a threat to national security and safety. And on that basis, they sent in. St. Lucia later withdrew its contingent. But they came in, and that was a source of anger and intimidation for the population. Because on the Thursday before the election, on the first day at 4 a.m. in the morning, they went to a village on the west coast called Salisbury, and that village had blocked the road, the main road going north. But instead of concentrating on that point of blockage and the people who were manning the blockage, the soldiers went up behind the village and released tear gas on a sleeping village. 4 a.m. in the morning. Man, woman, grandmother, grandfather, children, everybody was tear gassed. They subsequently claimed that, they were going to be attacked. So that creates an important regional dimension to it. And then the statements that came from people like Gaston Brown and Ralph Gonsalves and subsequently a couple others, all of whom have had the benefit of elections with clean lists and ID cards. These statements of these leaders completely ignored that. It had been called for by CARICOM, by the Commonwealth, and by the OAS. And they all agreed in August that it needed to be done before the next election. So they conveniently forgot that and were there, playing footsie with Roosevelt Skerrit. So, my friends, what we have here is we've turned over a new leaf on how things are conducted vis-a-vis elections in the English-speaking Caribbean, and it's not a nice picture. So I'm just, what we see, the validity and, if you will, and legality of the government, a new government is going to be challenged, is already challenged by people on the ground, and it's going to be legally and otherwise challenged. Because we feel if we allow this to stand, it will be a validation of that long list of irregularities and things, illegal things that went on, including the handing out of cash money while people were on the line waiting to go into the police station. So it's really a turning point. And people ask me how I feel. I feel great. I feel good, because if this is what it's going to take, if going into a volcanic crater while it is exploding is what it takes to make you realize it's not a good thing to do, then let's do it. We've done it, and let's move on.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's terrible. Definitely.
That's an ominous picture you have painted there, ATHIE. It really is. But like you said, I am happy that the evidence is being collected, and we hope to see what evidence will be collected and how it will play out. Because really and truly, if we are going to get a handle
Baby there?
Hello?
I think
I'm still here. You hearing me still?
Yeah,
Right.
we're hearing you.
Yes, if we are going to get a handle on this thing called democracy and the voting system, which underlines and supports that, then we have to get rid of all of these discrepancies. And we cannot allow a population to just sit back and behave as if corruption is the norm and we need to just accept it and move on. We just can't. And I saw so much of that reaction coming back. People making statements like, oh, people vote for what? People voting for their food. Nobody cares about Al Jazeera report. Nobody cares about passport selling. All people care about is the basics, their food. And my remark to that is that people do not care if they're being fed by corruption. You want to tell me that that is the level that humankind has degenerated, so that once you're collecting money, you're eating a food, you don't care? I refuse to accept that. I really don't. And whatever has to be done to buck that trend, it needs to be done. It really, really needs to be done. So St. Vincent started a process which is still stuck in the courts because the 2015 election in St. Vincent was challenged. And another election is going to be due very soon, and that one is not yet settled. So right next door to Dominica is St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where the people are not sure if they have a legitimate government because the matter has not been settled in the courts. And here again, now we have Dominica, where evidence is being collected. And I expect that the matter will go to the court.
Yeah.
And
we have 21 days.
Sorry?
We have 21 days from the 6th to get the evidence before the court and to to make the court aware of our intention to proceed with this matter.
Right. So we have these two countries, where people have said no, something went wrong in the elections, and we really want to have this ventilated in the court. And we certainly hope that we have talked about the corrupt systems, and there is evidence that our judicial system is tainted, unfortunately. Remarks that have come from judges, the remarks that have come from the Chief Justice in the OACS herself during one of her sessions, where she talks about all these attempts to infiltrate the justice system. We know it's happening. And we know that there are judges and people at the bar and on the bench who are seen to be less than credible. But my goodness, we certainly hope the system can work to ferret out what is happening in these elections, or else we're just not going anywhere. But it has to happen.
I use this illustration when it comes to Caribbean elections, and especially in these smaller islands. This week, the Olympic organization and World Football said that Russia can no longer participate. We have seen where athletes have run races and seem to have won them. And when they've done the investigation, they realize that they didn't, and they withdrew the medal and the standing. It don't seem that that kind of scrutiny can happen in Caribbean, in our islands. That once you get sworn in, doesn't matter what you did, it will never, never be dealt with. Athie, I'm not saying you guys shouldn't go ahead, because I think we should, but it seems that that is where we're at.
Yeah.
Right? It seems that that's where we are at. Because
where
when
we
you have
are, Jerry,
judges who...
I remember DWYER many months ago, was making a point about the need for restoring the vitality of grassroots and community movements and social organizations of youth and this and that and so on. And you know what is so pleasing for me is to hear that call coming from those same sectors themselves in Dominica, which used to be, if you will, a mecca of NGO and civil society activity and organization back in the 70s and 80s and stuff and 90s. And it is really, really pleasing to me to hear that call, people calling and saying they want to do this, they want to do it, they want to get involved. And I think DWYER reminded us earlier on that's ultimately that is not the political party thing that's going to fix this. The political party will be just one among many organizations that has to work for a sane society. And so that's the most encouraging thing for me out of all of this comments.
What I found about the election because I tried listening, was that the result came so quickly. I think I told you guys here that you get your results in St. Kitts and Nevis the next morning.
Yeah, yeah.
I have had votes counting for me at 7:25 a.m. the day after elections when I was a candidate. And I don't know that it takes so long to count 4,000 votes. But if there was one thing good there, it was that. And you know, it is good to have a national ID card, because in today's world you need ID. But in the meantime, while you're putting that together, you can do an amendment to the law and say you have to present ID, photo ID.
That's
it. ID, just photo ID.
Absolutely.
License, social security card, whatever it may be, passport. You know.
As I said, in Dominica, you cannot collect Western Union or MoneyGram monies without an ID.
No, I heard you, yeah. But you could vote without one.
I mean, that is, to me, that is where the thing crystallizes.
Yeah.
But why, you know, the existing legislation does give the commission the authority to actually to sort of do exactly what you said, that no amendment to the legislation is required. They could simply announce that we will accept this, that as identification, you know, in lieu of. They could do that right now.
So, you see, ATHIE and guys, I use the term guys generically. This is why we need, I think, to professionalize our electoral processes and institutions. Professionalize it, man.
I agree.
Professionalize it. This thing about party hacks, and party operatives holding key and sensitive positions in the electoral office, in the voting stations, in the public service. I mean, this is so degrading, and such an insult. Such an insult to those who had to fight for suffrage. This is not what they fought for. This year is degradation. It is degradation, and I saw some videos of people celebrating, and it's not unique to Dominica. But the only thing that could come to my mind, when you see people, especially those who have nothing, you know.
Exactly.
What came to my mind was, look at how our people are being misguided into celebrating their own degradation.
Exactly.
You know, it is tragic. I mean, catastrophically tragic. And as we mentioned earlier, that you had 3 tremors in Dominica today, and it hasn't stopped raining. And he says, for those who believe that those might be signs. These elections ought to be tremors to a body politic that has a conscience. But conscience gone. However, I do agree with ATHIE also, and I'm glad to hear that younger groups in Dominica, and that is the case in St. Kitts and Nevis, younger people today are not, like to use the Dominica lingo, Labour or UWP, you know. Their mother might be Labour or their father might be UWP. But they are deciding for themselves what they want to be. And those who back the different parties here, I'm seeing it increasingly in our country, are not the enemies of those who back the other one. The young people are getting along and having discussions and not quarrels. So that makes me hopeful. But in the meantime, the handle is in the wrong set of hands. Those who want to maintain this degrading status quo, they have to go.
And make them feel powerful.
But that's the only way they can be powerful. If your power is derived from a next man's disempowerment and degradation, you're not supposed to be anywhere close to power.
Exactly.
You're a good leader if you empower the small man and woman. Not if you, I made an analogy here some time ago. When I was campaigning leading up to the last election, I was like a lone wolf. A lot of people here were very supportive of Dr. Douglas, who had been in office for nearly 20 years. And I would tell some of them, I said, Dr. Douglas has his foot in your throat. And he has had his foot in your throat. Now, I have nothing personal against Dr. Douglas. I'm telling you what I was saying then. When a man has his foot in your throat for so long, and every now and again, he removes his foot to allow you to inhale and exhale, you believe he's doing you a favor. And you start to back him. And you give everything for him. Now, I only use that as an analogy. But that phenomenon applies in the island in which every one of you sits now.
Yeah, that's correct.
You back the man who has his foot in your throat.
Of course.
In every possible way, sometimes even literally. And you back him. And they said they love poor people, and I interpret that to mean they love people poor. They like you to be poor. And I see a cohort of young people in this country. And ATHIE says he sees it in Dominica. I hope each of you sing it in your country. Young people were saying, nothing tall go sober. We done with that. We done with that. We want to think about rising sea levels. We want food safety and security. We want all of these GMOs and all of these things to go. We want water and energy safety. We want a better life. We want to be able to come back home after we've gone to university and find a decent and elegant job and all of those things. And this party politics is preventing that from happening. So that is where my hope lies. That's why I do a lot of work with young people. And that's what you guys have to do in each of your islands. Work with the young people. You might find a couple of old heads like me who might go along and share their experience and so forth. But the hope is with the young people.
Absolutely. And one footnote I'd like to leave with us this evening too is the role and function of observer missions.
Oh yeah. Those are jokes.
That needs to be revisited.
Those are jokes, ATHIE.
Seriously, yeah.
I heard the reports. And they are as narrow as they can be.
That's right.
And as careful as they can be. They don't want to tread on anybody's toes. I don't have much respect for them. Whether it's OAS or CARICOM or BAS
Commonwealth
or BS or whatever. I don't have much respect for them, honestly.
Absolutely.
I mean, the call to implement campaign financing as the big thing. It's a joke. We all know it. So why focus on something you know not going to get done? It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going. This will not even be addressed in this legislation. But you leave the other issues that you know about, and did not reinforce the call for ID, for example, which to me is a much simpler matter.
Yeah.
You know, our Prime Minister said here today in delivering the budget speech that his government introduced freedom of information legislation. Guess what? They did, but they haven't operationalized it.
Every one of them. They have not allowed it to be assented to.
He said they introduced, the former government, they said, couldn't do it in 20 years. He has done it in 5. He says he's introduced the Integrity in Public Life Act. legislation, it is not operationalized. He said today that the Procurements and Contracts Administration Act, which we all know, is vital legislation in good governance.
Yep.
And it is deeply defective. He said it's working broad today in the parliament of the country.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to stop allowing ourselves to get fooled like this, man.
Yeah.
We got to stop it.
No, and ATHIE, they do it, for example, in many instances, the freedom of information was part of the Millennium Goals. So they passed it and make a lot of fuss so that the international community could see that they did it.
Yep.
But it never went to the Governor General to be assented. And there are several things like that on the books. And I have seen one these days, that is one of the things I must go and do. Must go and look at the legislation that have been passed and see what legislations have not been assented to, because I think there's more than we know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But they will tell you, and they will let the newspaper carry the story, and the journalists who don't check carry the story, so that it gets reflected in the international community that you have done this, but there's nothing.
Mm-hmm. Or sometimes they might even pass the legislation, but do not accompany it with any regulations. So
exactly, that's the other part.
Mm-hmm. You know,
that is the part. That is the part.
That is pervasive around here. Also with our integrity legislation, of course they need an office, they need a place to operate, but also required is an order by the minister responsible, who is the Minister of Legal Affairs, to trigger off the submission of personal declarations of value, of oath, of worth, by each of the officers covered by the Act. Now, this Act was passed and assented to a couple of years ago, but you know it has a provision, it shall be brought into force when the order is given by the minister.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister said today that the Integrity in Public Life Commission is funded to give the impression that it is operational.
Yeah.
But the order has not been issued by the Minister of Legal Affairs, and all of us know that is something you could do in 2 days.
Of course, easily.
So nobody has to file any declarations. And without declarations, you must making a nonsense of it. This is why I said, we are celebrating our own degradation, following these guys up and down the place. Yeah. And they're making fools of us.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yep,
not me.
Absolutely.
Not me.
But guys, I am going to say good night, because you see I've had a torrid time tonight. Mm-hmm. So thanks for being here, all of you, and I sign out.
Thank you, Bev.
Bye, Bev.
But who tell you could go?
She's allowed to take 2 minutes off.
Oh, what? She's allowed 2 minutes off. I listen to this one.
Very decisive.
Allowed 2 minutes off. I'm fair. Oh, jeez, boy. But yes, folks, we have to wrap tonight, and we had our struggles, but not most of it held together, except for Beverley, who really think. Just to say that in terms of Brexit, in terms of the British elections, the Conservatives are really rolling over the Labour constituencies.
Congratulations there, Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine.
Thank you. I was expecting that.
Yeah, really.
That's what I voted for. The best, Boris.
Landslide. Landslide.
So, the landslide up. So some of the constituencies that were Labour for years, I'm just looking at it now, and they got.
Yeah, they would.
North East England and so Sunderland. Yeah. They want a government which can be strong enough to take decisions. They're fed up with the impasse.
Exactly.
And I don't think they like Jeremy Corbyn either.
Oh no, he's crazy. He's totally bad.
He's just a good leader.
But let's wrap it this evening. And once again, to all our viewers, listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of Mek We Chat. So on behalf of all of the suspects, I'm Jerry George saying, join us again next week, God willing, for another edition of Mek We Chat. So long, y'all, George. Take it away.
Good night, all. Bye.
Night, guys.